Outputting our coverage. It's what we do.
That's all we do every Thursday
At 5:30.
College football.
Mountain West Conference.
Doesn't matter.
SEC
Is all that matters.
Nick Saban
Is crazy.
Yeah.
And that's all. Let's start the
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome into another exciting edition of Outputting Our Coverage. We're back once more to talk about all things football. David, this season has not disappointed for drama. Unfortunately, almost all of it thus far has been off the field. There hadn't been a lot of upsets or anything on the field so far. Let's start with Lane Kiffin, first of all. We've been saying, I think, if we were on college football firing threat watch, if we had been on that last week.
Right.
Personally, at that point, I probably would have ranked Mac Brown higher on the threat watch than Lane Kiffin.
If he had lost, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, just in general, I think I probably would have. However, in kind of a surprise move there, Lane Kiffin, once again, the rebel that he is, he manages to get himself fired first.
Yeah, if you read the reports, the USC directors all kind of got together during their game, which was a blowout loss to Arizona State. And at one point, Arizona State scored 21 unanswered points in the third quarter, and that's when they made their decision.
Yeah. And you're losing to a team coached by Todd Graham, who, is probably already trying to get the USC job at this point. I mean, he's
right.
That guy, he can't stay anywhere longer than a year. It was only a matter of time. I mean, we all knew Lane Kiffin was an idiot ever since his time at Tennessee. No coach has ever, really no person in any job has ever been more consistently hired for jobs that they're not qualified for. It's just astounding, really.
Or universally hated.
I mean, dating back to his time, I guess, when he was, offensive coordinator of USC,
yeah.
Got hired to coach the Oakland Raiders by Al Davis, who was admittedly crazy. I mean,
and old.
He was crazy and old. That one didn't lasted about, like a year and a half, I guess. Al Davis comes out and says, look, guys, I might be crazy, but Lane Kiffin, this dude is nuts. I mean, he is a terrible person. He's a liar.
Which apparently for Tennessee made complete sense.
Yeah, that was the thing. Of course, Tennessee and Auburn were both looking for coaches at the same time.
Right.
That was after Tuberville had left / been fired / whatever you want to believe. And I remember a lot of Auburn fans wanted to hire Lane Kiffin. And I was sitting there thinking, why?
Yeah.
What has this guy done anywhere? I mean, he's okay. Maybe he was associated with Pete Carroll or something.
Yeah,
but
he had brief success at Tennessee in the 1 year he was there.
They were okay.
They were better than they were the year before.
Yeah.
That was the.
What,
big
they
thing.
win like 8 games or something?
Yeah, and they hung around with a Florida team that had Tebow on it.
So they were all right.
They were okay. And then, have you ever seen a demise of a top program so quickly?
Yeah.
Like at USC. I mean, it's gone downhill quickly.
And certainly the sanctions that were in place and are still in place there have an effect. Basically, they took 55 players on the road with them last week. So, there are some restrictions there. Although, I believe that to a road game, you're usually, even with a full set, you're only allowed to take 70 players to a road game anyway.
It's not that much.
So that's not that different. I think that's a pretty big excuse. Lane Kiffin had kind of gone off the deep end, completely closed practices down, threatened to deny access to any reporters who were reporting on injuries.
Right.
I mean, it was getting pretty tinfoil hat-ish.
Yeah, it was pretty terrible.
There.
And then he got fired at the airport.
Yes.
As soon as the plane landed.
Yeah, got fired about 3 a.m. They would not even allow him back on the team bus. I'm sure Tennessee fans were smiling a lot about that one. I mean, you remember the way he left Tennessee, and it's pretty ugly.
Well, here's the difference in Tennessee and USC. USC, Southern California, not a whole lot of dedicated fans there.
Yeah.
I mean, they want to see their team win. Tennessee ran out onto the streets and burned mattresses.
Yeah.
I mean, that was pretty crazy.
I think that was more just an excuse to go burn mattresses, but still. I
It's
mean,
a good
they
point.
were upset.
Yeah.
Probably legitimately so. I mean, leaving after a year or so, that's a Todd Graham level move for sure. But,
Definitely.
yeah, I mean, so things had really kind of spiraled out of control there for USC. Lane Kiffin obviously in way over his head.
Now, if Texas loses to Iowa State this week, you could see the same thing.
Which is tonight, actually. That game is tonight. So I will certainly be watching that one to watch it unfold.
Oh, yeah.
We'll talk about that one here in a little bit. Kind of a tough pick for me at this point, but the bright side of the Lane Kiffin firing is Yaw.
Oh,
Coach Yaw is back in charge of a major football program. Ed Orgeron, former Ole Miss coach. If you've never seen this, do yourself a favor. Go to YouTube, look up Colonel Reb is crying, and watch the video.
Yeah.
Orgeron, in as much as Lane Kiffin was crazy in a bad way, Ed Orgeron is crazy in all of the best ways.
Definitely. I think USC is an awesome fit for him.
It's just going to be really entertaining to watch.
Oh, yeah. Pete Carroll was an odd character from all reports, and could you get a more odd character than Orgeron?
I don't know. I mean, Orgeron did terrible at
Ole
Miss. He was a great recruiter, not really that great of a coach. If you look back to when USC was having so much success, all the practices were open. Celebrities were there all the time.
Yeah.
Pete Carroll, I mean, that was the culture there. So the first thing that Orgeron did, he said, "Look, I'm opening practices back up. You guys are free to report on any injuries you want."
Right.
Small potatoes at that point. He also said that things he's learned differently from his last stint as a head coach. He said that this time he would not rip his shirt off on the first day.
That's probably a good idea.
That was a quote.
Oh, my goodness.
Also, he said that, I guess yesterday the quote was, he was restoring desserts to the training table meals because if you give an offensive lineman a cookie, you will make him a happy person.
I love this guy.
To that effect.
I'm going to start listening to every report that USC puts out.
Yeah, so it's definitely going to be entertaining to watch, certainly at 180. I don't know, maybe you can get those guys turned around. I don't think he's a legitimate candidate to be a full-time replacement.
Not at USC.
Yeah,
he could leverage this into another full-time position
if he does well.
Yeah, but USC is going to go after a high-profile name.
I would say probably the leaders in the clubhouse right now for the USC job. Names you'll hear a lot, at least Kevin Sumlin of Texas A&M. You probably see them maybe reach out to David Shaw at Stanford. He'll probably say no.
I think they'll maybe there's some coordinators in the NFL they'll go after.
Yeah, Jack Del Rio has been mentioned as one with the Broncos right now. I don't know. I still think if it were me going after Coach Charlie Strong would be at the top of my list. He may be in a pretty good spot here if he can kind of bid himself between USC and Texas.
Definitely.
It'll be interesting to see how that unfolds. But if things still play out the way we think they do and both those jobs are open, it's going to be a massively insane offseason.
Yeah, I think you're missing one, Andy. You got USC, you have Texas, and UConn. That position's open.
You're right. The UConn, the basketball job you must be referring to, right?
Oh, no, the football job.
Oh, the football job is open?
The football job is open.
Oh, man, the candidates are just lining up left and right for that one. I will give most SEC fans, SEC fans are pretty knowledgeable about football. I would venture to guess that 9 out of 10 SEC fans could not have named UConn's football coach.
No.
Maybe even like 9.5 out of 10.
Started with a P.
Yeah, the double P.
Yeah.
Paul Pasqualoni. He's no more. Just a sad day in the state of UConn as people momentarily forgot for a second how long it was until basketball season, but now they're back on track. So
that's true.
Everything's fine there. We're going to take a quick break. Got some news to report on an Alabama player suspended. Auburn releasing a new depth chart last night. We'll talk about that on the other side, as well as Auburn's game against Ole Miss. Plenty more to come here on the Outputting Our Coverage show. Stick around. We'll be right back.
It's time for SEC preview. SEC, Big 10, Big 12, 12 can't count. SEC, college football robber barons. SEC, yeah, they're big, they're fast, they're strong. And Missouri and Texas A&M as well. Yeah, SEC preview. Here we go.
All right, welcome back to the Outputting Our Coverage show. David, just something I noticed here on the score thing. I don't know if this is the Sports Illustrated score. It's not an app; it's a website.
The scoreboard.
It's the scoreboard here on the website. I was looking. It tells you the stadium names. Coincidence or not, Utah State's stadium is named Romney Stadium.
Not coincidence.
Do you think Mitt Romney has bought the Utah State Stadium and named it after himself?
I think he has put enough of a donation towards it for that to be.
If you're Mormon, and this is where we're going to get into our offensive zone here. If you're Mormon, how do you choose? Like, don't you have to give your money to BYU? I mean, I know Utah State and Utah probably got a Mormon aspect to it as well, but I mean, this is Utah State Stadium we're talking about. Wouldn't he want to buy the BYU Stadium?
You would think so, but
it's just weird.
I don't know. Maybe he went to Utah State?
It's possible. I don't know. These are the things I think about.
Maybe alumni status trumps, BYU being a Mormon school?
I don't know.
If you were Catholic and you went to any other university, do you give your money to Notre Dame or do you give it to that university?
See, that's the weird thing about it, and I listened to this other podcast, Solid Verbal.
Oh yeah,
if you're
definitely.
Familiar with that. One of the hosts, Ty Hildebrandt, he went to Penn State, but huge Notre Dame fan because he grew up Catholic.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know. I think that's possible. I mean, maybe
split your donation.
Maybe I don't know. I don't know these things, David.
I don't either.
If you know the answers to these questions, tweet us. Our Twitter is
Output Our Cover.
Output Our Cover. We're also on Facebook at Outputting Our Coverage. We have a blog. We don't update it anymore, but we might at some point in the future.
This is true.
That address is outputtingourcoverage.wordpress.com, I believe.
If we have any updates, you'll see them on Twitter or Facebook.
Yes, Twitter is certainly the best place to follow us.
You know why our blog is about to get updated, don't you?
Why is
we
that?
talked about it a little bit before the show. The NHL season just started.
Oh,
and that is the only place I can talk about the NHL. So I will be updating the blog.
I just, it's a good thing you're writing those on there, and it will be saved in the annals of the internet forever, so that someday people can read it. And
it really boosts our Canadian outreach.
Do we want that? Is that a thing that we want, David?
Maybe. I don't know.
See, the thing I'm surprised
we're gonna teach them about Southern football, and that we're gonna convert them.
But really, at this point, I think we have to consider the Canadians our enemy. I mean, the government has officially shut down, number one.
So we don't know who our enemy is because the government hasn't told us.
We don't know. It seems to me that a Canadian invasion is imminent at this point.
No.
It's going to happen. I mean, we're all distracted with NFL and college football. The government is shut down. How easy is it for those guys to just sneak right across the border?
There are too many people in our country with guns.
Yeah, but the Canadians, they look just like us, David.
It's a good point.
They look just like us.
They do.
I mean...
Except with the French speaking.
Yeah. So, I don't know. To me, the only way to determine a Canadian is if they start talking about hockey.
Yeah.
David.
Maybe.
David.
Parlez-vous français?
Oh, man.
All right. We've got way off track from our SEC segment. We better move
on here. Big news coming out today. Actually kind of broke last night. Hashawn Clinton-Dix, better known by our friend Vern as he has been indefinitely suspended by Nick Saban. Saban would not say anything last night as is usual. Basically only saying, my policy not to comment on those things. I don't know how long it's going to be, so on and so forth. The rumor I heard last night was something agent-related that was not corroborated by anybody, really. Today comes out that one of Alabama's assistant strength coaches, I forget what the guy's name is, but...
Davis.
Something, yeah. Some kind of boring and unusual or usual name, I guess. He has been placed on leave because he gave a $500 loan.
An amount less than $500.
Okay.
They didn't specify how much.
So it's an amount less than $500. I would assume it's probably closer to $500 than $20. But,
maybe.
We don't know for sure.
If it's more than zero, it's a violation.
That's true. It doesn't matter. Certainly an ironclad violation of NCAA rules.
Corey Harris.
Okay. Kudos to for... filling out his paperwork properly.
That's
he did
right.
make sure to document that he paid the loan back.
Well, he showed bank records, yeah.
So he can't be sued by Mr. Harris saying that, hey, you never paid me back. However,
still a violation.
A bit of a problem from the NCAA's perspective. David, talk me through the immediate and or long-term fallout of this.
I don't know. I think this week he's definitely not playing.
Right.
There's no question of that.
I mean, he's technically ineligible.
He's technically ineligible, right? Well,
right?
No, because the NCAA has not ruled on this, and we don't even know that the NCAA is investigating this. Okay. All this is coming from inside Alabama. So this is all internal self-policing. Right now, he could technically play this week if they wanted him to, but Alabama and Nick Saban have chosen to suspend him. It's an indefinite suspension. They don't have to put a timetable on his return. I think what they're going to do is submit this directly to the NCAA. They're going to report on themselves, and I think the NCAA is probably going to take some lenience on the fact that they brought it up. But I don't think this becomes a huge deal. I do think HaHa serves somewhere around 3 game suspension, but I don't think he's suspended for the entire year simply because he paid the money back. Because what they would have asked him, the first thing they would have told him to do is he would have had to pay the money back.
Right.
Which is their first step in all these violations. But he's already done that. I think they go a little soft on the suspension.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if money is any different from jerseys or anything of that nature, but I mean, you can think back to like AJ Green at Georgia a couple years ago. Signed some jerseys, got some money. Basically, I think with AJ Green, he sat out about 3 games. They made him pay back the value to a charity or something.
Right.
I think you're right. I think the fact that Alabama self-reported it probably makes a pretty big difference. If you look back to Auburn, actually, the incident that got them placed on probation back in the 90s was very similar. Basically, coach giving a loan to a player. The difference there, number one, that was a different enforcement time. Things were a lot stricter.
Oh, definitely.
And number two, not as much cooperation between Auburn and the NCAA. At that point, Auburn felt like it was a legitimate. The player was really in need of that.
Oh, yeah.
And you can make a lot of arguments different ways. It's still against the rules.
The NCAA is stupid in this regard. I mean, if you wanted to bring a kid in who did not have a place to stay, and you were a coach and he just slept in one of the rooms in your houses, that's a violation. That's a violation. You can't do that. It just seems wrong.
So, taken on its own, I don't think this thing with HaHa is too as big of a deal as some people will make it out to be. However, there's kind of a trend developing here.
Yeah.
You've had 10 suspensions since last year.
You had Fluker come out as having funds delivered to him.
Right. I mean, you think back to the Brent Callaway and those guys suspended, kicked off the team prior to the season.
Although we still don't know what some of these suspensions were for.
That's true.
I mean, they're still team rules, so I mean, you're going to have people suspended on every roster.
That's true. I don't know. Is it a cause for concern at this point?
I don't think so. I don't think it is yet. I do think, and I've said it for the last year or so, I think Alabama, before it's all said and done, gets nailed pretty hard with some violations. I think they're going to come back and find that there were players being paid. I think, really, if you look hard enough at any university, you're going to find it. Right. But I think Alabama's time is about to run up. Well, I think they're about to get hit.
There's just been a lot of things out there that haven't really been investigated. I mean, you had the textbook scandal.
Right.
You had
but that was investigated and ruled upon. That one's already over.
Okay, well, that's true. But you had the T-Town menswear thing.
Yeah.
Nothing really ever came of that. You got this DJ Fluker stuff floating around. I think you're right. I just feel like, and I'm not trying to speak as an Auburn homer here, but at some point, after so many of these items have come out, you wonder if there's something there. And, of course, I know people use that same logic with Cam Newton as well, so I don't want to sound like a hypocrite here, but I don't know. It just seems like something is amiss here.
Can I make a prediction real quick?
You can. Go ahead.
I think what you'll see is that about 2 months before Alabama gets hit with sanctions, you'll hear of Nick Saban retiring. I think it'll be in the offseason. I think he'll retire because he hears the whispers, and I think Alabama gets.
So you think it'll be like next year he retires? That's what you're saying.
1 to 2 years.
Okay.
I think it's going to come down to 1 to 2 years.
That's an interesting prediction. I think some people have kind of said maybe this is an impetus for him to leave and go to another job, but you think it'd be retirement.
I think once he leaves Alabama, he's done.
Interesting.
So.
He's maybe close to retirement. I don't know.
He's old. He's older than people give him credit for. It's just
it's a weird thing to say. But,
yeah. And plus, he told Kevin Sumlin he just took 10 years off his life, so he doesn't have that much longer.
Yeah, well, that is true. That's very true.
He's got a decade to make up for.
It'll certainly be interesting to watch this play out.
Well, let's look at the schedule and see what kind of impact this would have on the upcoming.
And let's just say this, too. I mean, look, come on. It's not a coincidence this happened the week before Georgia State.
Right, definitely.
I mean, come on,
if you had to
guys.
pick your week, this would be it.
Yeah, and we've seen that happen before here too. I mean, T.J. Yeldon, he got suspended for the first half of Colorado State. I mean,
but that was
related to
it was for a throat/celebration.
Right.
I mean,
But
he didn't really have to be.
This isn't the first time something like this has happened where players have been suspended for a lesser opponent.
That is everywhere you go. That is not here at Alabama. Every single person, if they get to pick, will Johnny Manziel was suspended for the first half against Rice.
That's true. I'm not saying it's not unique to Alabama, but I'm just there is some fortuitous timing that's been involved.
Yeah,
so.
I've got to say that's everywhere you go with suspensions. But let's say that takes a 5-game suspension, a 5-week suspension.
Okay,
he will miss Georgia State, at Kentucky, home against Arkansas, home against Tennessee, and then an open day, a bye week before the LSU week. So he can miss 5 weeks of football. He can miss 5 total college football weeks and still be okay.
Yep. I don't think this really affects Alabama at all until they play LSU.
But their secondary already was terrible, and you took one of their 2 decent secondary players away. It could affect it. Not against Georgia State.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe a team like, I don't know.
Tennessee,
even Arkansas or
they
Tennessee maybe can take advantage.
Arkansas just scored, 35, 40 points against Texas A&M?
But Texas A&M's defense.
Texas A&M's
I
defense
think we'll find they're atrocious.
They are atrocious, but at the same time, Alabama's secondary has been vulnerable to teams like Colorado State.
It's true. I don't know. I think what we've learned so far, we'll kind of slide into the games here. Alabama's game against Ole Miss last week. Certainly a better performance defensively, although I will say that Ole Miss played a stupid game plan. I mean,
definitely.
Not going for any of those field goals. I
don't know what they were trying to prove.
Momentum
with that.
killing.
Yeah.
Offensively, I thought Alabama played better. They were able to move the ball some, get back into a rhythm. You could tell that was a big focus for them. But
still a lot of mistakes on the offensive line there.
Yeah, I think some folks are making a big deal out of Alabama shutting out Ole Miss. I don't know that we can take too much out of that game.
I think they're making more of a big deal about it because Bo Wallace said that he could score on anybody,
and that was stupid.
And they had a shutout. That was what a lot of people were making.
The game was certainly different than what I expected it to be. I didn't expect a shutout. I expected either real high scoring close game or Alabama scoring a lot of points and Ole Miss maybe scoring in like the 20s or something.
I gotta say, from watching a bunch of Alabama games, there's one thing that's been consistent about all of them. They are boring, except for the A&M game.
Yeah,
that's the only one. But they're tough to watch.
That's the style that they're going for, and kind of grinds the life out of an opponent,
and a viewer.
Yeah.
So,
well, I don't think they're having any ratings problems. They seem to be doing okay there. But anyway, so I don't know that we may not really learn anything more about Alabama until they play LSU. Is kind of what I'm thinking.
That's true. I think you might see them struggle with Arkansas.
Really, you think so?
I think so. I think they might struggle with
the run game of Arkansas is going to be tough. Or
no, I think they've got their quarterback back. I think he's going to be able to play action and gouge him a little bit, especially early.
Okay.
So we'll talk about that more as it gets here.
Okay. Certainly this week Alabama shouldn't have any issues. Georgia State. I saw some folks saying that Alabama has no business scheduling Georgia State,
who's 0-4 in Division II play.
I mean, I don't really care. I don't understand that line of thinking. I mean, if Georgia State agrees to play you, they're getting a nice paycheck out of it, getting some nice publicity.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they're not expecting to win. What's the issue?
I don't have an issue. I mean, everybody's got a game like that on their schedule, whether it be the Citadel.
I mean, what's the difference? Is it because Georgia State's so bad? Is that why people think they shouldn't schedule them?
Probably.
But
Georgia State, isn't that the one that just became a school a couple years ago?
Yes. Yeah, it's in downtown Atlanta.
And so they have a tie. I mean, didn't the coach used to coach?
He just retired, Bill Curry. He was an Alabama coach.
But when they made the schedule out.
Right, he was probably still there. I don't know. I don't have a problem with it. I mean, Nick Saban, you can bang on him all you want to, but he's not a guy that's going to run the score up on you on purpose.
No. And Jim Tressel used to schedule Youngstown State every year because he used to coach there. If you look at Alabama's out-of-conference games, a lot of them are former coaches. Colorado State, They brought back in McElwain.
And it's about the money, David. These schools are getting a nice paycheck to come there.
Yeah,
so
they're just giving a little handout to some friends.
I'm not feeling too sorry for them. Anyway, Alabama, I'd say, what's the spread on that game? I'm curious. It's
I think
probably
40-something.
40?
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Maybe, but maybe not.
Speaking of spreads, if we got time at the last segment, remind me of
Okay,
a spread
I will remind
story.
you. If we're going to have time in the last segment, we got to keep moving forward here. Let's talk Auburn now. New depth chart came out for Auburn last night with some pretty interesting surprises on there. Most of the shifting happening on the defensive side of the ball, specifically at defensive tackle. No secret that Auburn's had some issues on the defensive line this year, as for the past couple of years.
Right.
Had a couple of guys that were pretty highly rated recruits. Angelo Blackson, Gabe Wright, 4-star guys.
Oh, yeah.
They're juniors. Really haven't done anything at this point. And both of those guys on the new depth chart that came out left off the 2 deep.
Wow.
In favor of Nosa Igwe, a defensive end, 270 pounds. He has taken one of the starting defensive tackle spots.
Yeah, I always thought he was more of a defensive end, but...
Yeah, and I'm going to put a theory out there about this depth chart, David. I think it might be, kind of a prod to some of these players. I don't think it's legitimate. Let's put it that way.
I think this might be a 1 week defensive style change because Ole Miss runs very much side to side. Now, Auburn did have had trouble stopping LSU, but that's a power up the middle running game.
Right.
Auburn's trying to get speed and flexibility to cover that spread to the sideline.
I agree. I think that's part of the move here. The starting defensive tackles now are going to be Ben Bradley, the junior college transfer, and also Gabe Wright. So get a little bit more speed, hopefully a little bit more ability to maybe shed some blocks. Carl Lawson and Elijah Daniel, the 2 freshman defensive ends, are now number 2, respectively, at each end position. So they've moved up. Montravius Adams, he is number 2 behind one of the defensive tackles, still pushing for a starting spot. So I think at this point, Auburn's coaches are kind of saying, you know what? Older guys, you had your shot.
We're letting talent play.
We got to move in a different direction.
So where's Jake Holland on this depth chart?
Jake Holland's still number 1, which is my primary reason why I think the depth chart's a far state. I'm not sure what Chris Frost has to do to play more.
I tried to stand up for Jake Holland, and it's impossible at this point.
Okay, the defensive line is not very good, and that hurts Jake Holland's play, but
no,
it still doesn't mean he's a good player.
He cannot make the tackles that he's supposed to make. He's there, he's in position, the defensive line did their job, and he just misses it.
Right. A couple other interesting things to note. Chris Davis, Auburn's best cornerback, still kind of nursing an injury, was not on the 2 deep, but I would still expect to see him play this weekend. Jonathan Jones, a backup cornerback, may also be coming back as well. That would certainly help Auburn out. Ricardo Lewis, one of the wide receivers who at the beginning of the season was getting a lot of hype, not on the 2 deep at all now. Had some drops, a little bit of running side to side rather than running north-south.
Which is normal for a new kid coming in.
So Auburn coaches sending a message there with that depth chart. I also saw an interesting perspective this week. One of the folks online said if they didn't see anything better out of Nick Marshall this week, they would think it would be time to give somebody else a shot.
Like, I don't know.
Like Jeremy Johnson, perhaps?
Somebody named Wallace?
No. I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, if Nick Marshall's not your guy, I don't think Jonathan Wallace is your long-term answer. That's kind of beside the point. To me, that's ridiculous at this point.
Oh, yeah.
Nick Marshall hasn't been the greatest guy, but...
Well, look at Zach Mettenberger last year. He struggled, and then he caught it on the Alabama game.
And we've seen flashes from Nick Marshall. I just think at this point to be saying that's ludicrous. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Let's talk a little bit about the game. Ole Miss and Auburn. The spread is, I believe, about 3.5 in favor of Ole Miss. It's almost kind of a no-win situation for Auburn in this game. Auburn's still not getting a lot of respect. If Ole Miss beats them, Auburn, oh man, you guys lost to Ole Miss. We kind of expected that. If Auburn beats Ole Miss, I don't think they really get that much respect out of it either
They
way.
were beaten down by Alabama before
Right.
they played you.
But
Yeah.
it's a super important game for Auburn's season. I mean, you win this game, you're virtually assured a bowl game. You got 2 more easily winnable games: Western Carolina and Florida Atlantic,
which would get you 6.
so you got 6 at that point.
Yeah.
Plus, just from a momentum perspective, this is a must-win game. You're at home. Some of your other games at Arkansas, at Tennessee, more difficult because you're on the road. And this is one of those games, a swing game that you feel like you got a pretty even matchup. I think it's going to be a really close game, David.
I think so. I actually like Auburn in this game. I think their speed in the 4-2-5 side-to-side, stopping the run game for Ole Miss is going to help them, whereas they were a little overmatched with LSU last week. And I actually kind of like their offense against Ole Miss's defense. I do think they're worn down a little bit from playing Alabama. A little bit more of a smash mouth, kind of hit you in the mouth style offense. So I actually picked Auburn to win in this one.
Yeah.
I like their chances.
And you got a lot of inexperienced guys on Ole Miss's defense. A lot of those
Definitely.
freshmen they're playing. Gus Malzahn, a guy that knows how to misdirect and take advantage of some of those things. I think with a bye week, you got a lot more chance to get some more of the offense installed, get some more familiarity, try out some different guys, just get more comfortable with it. I think you'll see the offense running a little bit more smoothly. And also, one of the things that's really been missing so far this year has been that pace that Gus Malzahn has talked about. I think they may try that a little bit more here. But keep in mind that Hugh Freeze
Also likes pace.
Yeah, I mean, those guys they're friends.
Yeah.
And Ryan Applin, who was Gus Malzahn's quarterback at Arkansas State last year, is now an offensive assistant coach
At Ole Miss.
So
Yeah.
he's got some familiarity there. These guys, they know what each other wants to do. So they're going to have to kind of step outside their comfort zones and try some different stuff, I think.
Well, yeah, and I thought last week might be the week that Nick Marshall really kind of figured things out and it clicked. The monsoon, I think, hurt a lot of that. So
Yeah.
I think you could really see Nick Marshall click in this game. And if you do, Auburn could score a bunch of points right here.
Yeah, we'll see. It's certainly a defining game for the season. I think Auburn wins as well, probably by a touchdown or so. I think it's going to be a pretty close game.
I think they cover the spread.
Should be an excellent game to watch. Let's take a quick break, Dave. We'll be right back on the other side, talk about a couple of the other SEC games and some of the other interesting games around the country for this week. We'll be right back on Outputting Our Coverage.
I hopped off the plane at LAX with a dream, my cardigan. Welcome to the land of fame excess. Am I gonna fit in? Jumped in the cab, here I am for the first time. Look to my right and I see the Hollywood sign. This is all so crazy. Everybody seems so famous. My tummy's turning and I'm feeling kinda homesick. Too much pressure and I'm nervous. That's when the taxi man turned on the radio and a Jay-Z song was on. And the Jay-Z song was on. And the Jay-Z song was on. So I put my hands up to play my song. The butterflies fly away. Not in my head like, yeah.
The nostalgia, David. The days when that was still just a wholesome, feel-good moment.
I just tried to bring it back to you.
It's just not that anymore. Anyway, quite a few good SEC matchups this weekend. We're finally getting into that time of year when the scrub games are out of the way. Really get to see what some of these teams are made of. Let's start with the CBS game, 2:30, Georgia and Tennessee. It's in Knoxville. I was kind of surprised the spread on this one was only about, 10.5 points or something?
Right. I don't
That's
think
crazy.
I don't think it'll be that close. I think you'll see a lot of volunteer fans leaving the stadium early on this one.
Yeah, Georgia's really hitting on all cylinders right now. Maybe you look for some kind of a letdown or something, but I think Georgia runs all over Tennessee. Tennessee had a lot of trouble with South Alabama last week.
Oh, yeah.
That's not a good sign, David.
No. I think
not a good sign at all.
Rajon Neal probably has a pretty good game at running back just because Georgia's inexperienced young defense still
Right.
isn't there yet.
Right.
But outside of that, I don't expect Tennessee to do a whole lot.
We've also got LSU and Mississippi State. Any chance Mississippi State gives LSU a run for their money here?
Sure. I mean, after playing an emotional game like LSU did against Georgia last week, especially coming up just short, Mississippi State has been able to put up some points on some people. So It's possible. I just don't think they'll do it. Mississippi State does have going for them what Auburn did not have is a strong front seven.
They do.
So they could really cause some havoc in that power run game.
I think Mississippi State's front seven may be one of the best in the SEC.
I completely agree with that.
So they might be able to stop Jeremy Hill. The problem is now that just stopping LSU's rushing attack is not enough.
It's not. Mettenberger's playing much better.
Right. So I think LSU wins that one in Starkville. Arkansas and Florida. Florida had the week off last week as well. Now they have quarterback Charlie Murphy coming back.
Yeah.
Jeff Driscoll, of course, out for the year. Arkansas, like we said, hung with Texas A&M, probably because Texas A&M's defense was so bad. But who wins this one?
I think
Arkansas offense or Florida defense?
I think Florida runs away with it. Florida's defense is number one in almost every statistical category in the SEC. Arkansas is going to face a completely different defense than what they saw last week. I think what we saw with them was an aberration. I really like Florida with Charlie Murphy in there. And I think they're a better offense. The stats kind of go back to it. His QBR rating is double anything Driscoll ever got in any of his starting roles. So I think Florida's looking pretty good right here.
Yeah,
they're not being talked about a lot.
They're not. I mean, their offense has been bad. Defensively, I mean, they're really, this year, you could make an argument and say that Florida is the only true SEC defense this year.
I could agree with
by
that.
traditional
Unless
standards.
you want to throw Mississippi State in there, but they're just kind of a bad team.
Yeah, I don't know.
If Mississippi State's offense was any better, they would be in consideration.
Yeah, but yeah, I agree. Florida probably wins that one with relative ease. South Carolina and Kentucky playing. South Carolina had some trouble with UCF when they did what SEC teams should never do, which is travel to an inferior team's home stadium.
Right.
It was just totally predictable. This week, however, playing Kentucky at home, absolutely no issues expected.
They win by a lot.
Yeah. Missouri and Vanderbilt. Missouri quietly 4-0 after having played absolutely no one.
Yep.
Vanderbilt, the loss against Ole Miss to start the season, kind of at the last minute. They've struggled a little bit, like when they went up to play UMass.
Which
didn't
is a
exactly
terrible idea.
Go real great for them. I don't know, David. It's in Nashville. Of course, Vandy, not much of a real home field advantage. You got the James Franklin Bowl here, basically.
That's true.
James Franklin,
The
Missouri
quarterback and the coach.
Yeah. What are your thoughts here?
Here are all the thoughts that you need to know about on this one. Murray State, Toledo, at Indiana, Arkansas State. That's all Missouri's played at this point.
Right. That's true.
And that's what I'm going off of. Vandy has struggled, but their defense has been solid in a lot of their games. It's been the offense that sputtered. Missouri's not really known for defensive prowess. I think both teams are going to score some points, but in the end, I think Vandy is able to make the stops that Missouri's not.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm tempted to maybe try to call for a Missouri upset here. I think it'll probably be relatively close, but Vanderbilt, James Franklin's a good coach. They've had some tough breaks so far this year with a couple of the games they've played, but
I mean, they're Vandy. That's just what you get.
I think they will probably win this one.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So we'll see how that goes. David, let's look at the Pick 10 real quick. Let's talk Pick 10 standings.
Well,
at this point.
Let's talk about Pick 10. Last week we had another 10-0.
We did,
and it was a difficult week.
Yeah, it was a real tough. It's been a tough week pretty much every week so far.
So the Maryland Aub, 10-0. Jack 91-55, and about 5 other people went 9-1. Andy, where'd you finish last week? You were 8-2.
Yeah, pretty standard for me.
Yeah.
Usually about an 8-2 average.
You're just very consistent. Yeah. I, however, win 5-5. So that's what I get for picking out of the ballpark.
So you are Doo-Doo River Craycraft. I think at this point we can officially answer the question: floater or sinker.
Yeah, right now I'm a sinker.
Yeah,
but
sure.
I'm crawling up that board. You just wait.
Okay,
it's going to happen.
Right.
I will not finish in the lower half.
Okay, well, we'll see.
That is
see
the prediction.
how it goes.
Overall standings: Moobs still has a 1-game lead on Boobs.
How many times do you hear that every day?
And Big Dog. I think they're at this point just picking the same teams.
Yeah.
Saban Peas Like a Girl and Andy are tied for 4th.
Only 2 games behind.
Only 2 games out.
I can make that up easily.
Let's see. From the top at 40-10 to me at 28-22. You've only got a 12-game span, so that's pretty big.
I do believe that Max 2011, who missed a week of picks, is now tied with you, David.
This is correct, at 28-22.
It's kind of like you got lapped. Almost.
Yeah, almost. And then Jack 91-55 also missed a week.
Yeah,
and is tied with me.
That's
where I'm at right now with my picks.
Hey, it's okay. We're here for you, Dave.
I'm telling you now, they're getting better. I'm just warning you.
Okay, we'll believe when we see it.
All right, the next pick that we haven't talked about is Maryland at Florida State. This is kind of an intriguing game for me.
Yeah, Maryland 4-0, surprisingly. Florida State, we're still waiting for them to lay the typical Florida State egg. Typically they do that on the road, so I'm not quite as worried about this one in Tallahassee. Jameis Winston, he's been spectacular.
I think he's the key.
Yeah, Maryland, I mean, sure, they beat West Virginia and made them look bad, but that doesn't really
They're
mean
West
anything to me,
Virginia.
so Florida State wins.
Yeah, I think they cover the 14.5 spread. Texas at Iowa State.
Yeah, that one's tough, man. I don't know. Iowa State is one of those teams that always wins a game they shouldn't. Texas is still more talented. Texas has struggled somewhat against the run before installing their new defense coordinator. Iowa State's not been a great running team. I'm going to take Texas.
I'm taking Texas in the landslide. To me, this isn't close. Iowa State lost to Northern Iowa this year.
Yeah, that is true.
So
the spread's only 7.5, though.
I know.
And that was tonight, so you can watch that. Ohio State, Northwestern. Game day is going to be at Northwestern. Pretty much Ohio State's last tough test until Michigan.
And only tough test from the season so far.
Yeah, I mean, you can count Wisconsin maybe for last week.
This is the problem I have with Ohio State. Any other given conference, I say that Northwestern has a chance in this game.
Right.
Ohio State only has to get up for 2 games all year. It's not going to be a problem for them to get up for Northwestern, and it kind of ticks me off. I picked Ohio State.
I agree.
Angrily.
I think Ohio State wins that one as well.
Northwestern, though, good team.
Yeah, they're a good team. I mean, they'll go to a pretty good bowl this year.
I think so.
TCU, Oklahoma. Haven't heard much out of TCU since they played LSU. Pretty close. They had a good game with them. Oklahoma, of course, taking care of Notre Dame. Blake Bell has been better than advertised.
Pretty good thrower.
However, it's about time for Oklahoma to drop a game, don't you think?
Sure. You're picking TCU right here?
No, I'm not.
Okay,
I'm going to pick Oklahoma.
I'm also picking Oklahoma.
I wouldn't be surprised if they lost.
I would be surprised. I think Oklahoma's a pretty solid team. I don't think they're the teams of days gone by where they were competing for a championship. I think they're better than they have been.
Okay. All right. Let's travel out to the Pac-12. Washington and Stanford.
This was my difficult game to pick.
I'm not going to make a pick yet. I need to do some more research.
Washington really seems to have their offense going. I mean, they've got things put together there.
Stanford, of course, though, playing SEC football in the Pac-12, basically.
Definitely.
And, they've been doing a real good job out there. This one's too close to call for me. It's a game-time decision.
Okay. I'm going to give my pick. I've got Stanford winning at home. It's a 7.5-point spread. I can tell you right this second, if I was picking against the spread, I'm picking Washington. I think this game's within 3.
Yeah. UCLA and Utah staying out there in the Pac-12. This one's tonight as well. UCLA under Jim Moore has really exceeded, I think, anybody's expectations.
Oh, definitely.
Of course, they beat Nebraska in that pretty good comeback a couple weeks ago. Utah has not really played anyone of note yet.
No. They're 3-1 with wins over Utah State, Weber State, lost to Oregon State in a shootout, and then they beat BYU.
Yeah, I don't know. I just got a feeling tonight, though, David. Utah at home, UCLA not quite ready for it yet. I'm going to take Utah here.
Okay, I'm going to take UCLA. I think Jim Moore is crazy enough to make it work.
And UCLA, number 12 team in the country.
I think that's too high.
That's way too high.
Their strength of schedule comes here in just a little bit. They'll get theirs. They play California at Stanford, at Oregon, Colorado, at Arizona, home against Washington, Arizona State, and USC.
Yeah,
they've got
it's
3.
Get tougher.
They got 3 losses in there.
I think they're probably a top 25 team, but not a top 15 team.
No, I'm thinking probably when the season's over, somewhere between 17 and 25.
Yeah, I can live with that. David, you told me to remind you about spreads before we left this.
Okay, real quick before we end the show, there was a Vegas odds maker who asked to be left anonymous, who actually laid a point spread down if Alabama and the Denver Broncos were to meet. And a lot of people thought it might have been closer. He put the point spread that the Broncos would be favored by 40 points. Is that too high?
I think it might be too low.
The assumption was that the Broncos would score every possession in the first 3 quarters, and that Alabama would be lucky to score 10.
Yeah.
Is that about right?
I'm not sure why this is being mentioned, because at this point, I don't think Alabama has shown themselves to be the best team in the country this year.
I completely agree. But let's do this. Alabama or Oregon, either one, against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, he said that would still be a 20-point favorite for the Jaguars.
Yeah.
What do you think about that number?
I agree. That sounds about right. I mean, even the worst NFL team is going to have better talent than the
Have
best.
you watched a Jaguars game?
No, I don't watch the NFL game.
Yeah.
You know this.
I have watched
still,
the Jaguars
game. They
game.
can't be that bad against a college team.
They are bad.
Who's their quarterback?
It's either Chad Henne or the guy who came out of Missouri.
Blaine Gabbert?
Blaine Gabbert. And whoever's not hurt
at
the time.
I don't know.
They are terrible.
Yeah.
I think Oregon would beat them by 50.
That's a bold prediction there.
That's a bold prediction. We've got to make this happen.
Yeah, we'll see what we can do. That's all the time we got this week on Outputting Our Coverage. Enjoy the games this weekend. We'll be back next week. Till then, we'll see ya.